We were just
All right.
literally talking right there, Drew, and welcome to the show, and thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Oh, bro, it was way overdue. A German ballet director didn't like a review of his show, so he smeared dog feces or dog shit, as we probably call it, in someone's face. Have you ever had anyone online talking shit and you've wanted to rub some dog shit in their face?
I mean, I think the internet is for talking shit, so I think the dog shit would be a little outrageous. But no, I don't think anyone's got it that far.
No. Anyway, you just jumped on just as we were talking about that. Lots of things to talk about, Drew. The one thing that's going around the rumor that's circulating, and I'm just going to start with this. I'm going to ask, because you even kind of cryptically tweeted, big things going on this year. If you can't talk about it, just say can't talk about it. But Drew Dober, Paddy Pimblett, UFC 288, 6th of May, according to someone on Twitter.
Well, I mean, that's one exciting fight. I mean, I think everyone wants to see me punch Paddy in the mouth and to test his scouser theory. But it's really all up in his field. I'm not above fighting anybody, and especially someone as well liked as this guy. But the ball's in his court, so I've accepted. I'm all for it. I'm ready to go whenever he wants. Now we're just waiting on him.
So you got offered the fight and you accepted it?
I wouldn't go say it was offered, as in I've been, putting my name up in the mix to fight him. Now we're just figuring out what the UFC wants to do with Paddy. And, like when you have X many followers on Instagram, right? Like he has to, call the shots. And we'll see what he wants, and I'll agree to it.
Well, I hope it happens, because it would be a fantastic fight. And to be honest, Drew, it's kind of the matchups that you deserve right now. Let's go back to that fight, because obviously we don't know if that fight's going to happen. No point sitting here talking too much about Paddy, but I hope it happens, because I think it'd be a great fight for both of you. That fight against Bobby Green, oh my God, that was sensational. Listen, Bobby's awesome. And by the way, the sportsmanship that you both showed afterwards, because Bobby's just a G, isn't he? But he's fast, he's slick. You know what I mean? And he was giving you a bit of a tough time to start, because that's what he does, because he's so good. But you just stayed the course, and in round 2, backed him up against the fence, and boom, the shot. I mean, what was going through your mind? Because he is elusive and so quick. What was going through your mind? Like at the end of round 1, were you like, this son of a bitch, just stay in one place for a second?
I mean, it was in the middle of the first round. I was like, damn, Bobby Green's doing this to me. Like, we thought about it all camp. Like, don't allow this to happen. Don't do this. But, man, he was just so good at it. And, like, he was putting it on me. And, like, I was like, oh, man, he's doing this to me. Man, he just, the way he runs his mouth and moves his head, and he's just so elusive. It was a style of fight that I've never been a part of. So I sat on that stool in between rounds, and I looked at my coach. I was like, well, that didn't work. What's next? And, the key was, the term was throw to miss, right? I think I was engaging a little too much in that first round, trying to land everything, and I wasn't able to see his counters. So in the second round, we came in with just the ability to just miss punches and more control the octagon. And I was able to see his counter, and it got to a point where once I got in the pocket, I refused to get out of the pocket, and we found that left hand.
Drew, in your last couple fights, it seems like the beginning of them, has it started the way that you wanted, but I think you're making adjustments better now, and you're like now at this point in your career than you have in the past. So I feel like in the past you've always been in these real gritty, I don't know, just kind of back and forth battles where you're kind of taking it, but you're giving damage back. But it seems you didn't make the adjustments early on in your career that you're making now. What would you change? Like, I know you still have a lot of the same people in your camp. You're kind of in the same spot. So it does seem like maybe they're a little rougher than they were at the start, but you're making much better adjustments as the fight goes.
Yeah, man, my first rounds in that Apex haven't been so good in the year of 2022. But my older age, you gotta make adjustments in your 30s, or else you're just gonna drown. And on top of that, my loss against Brad Riddell was a huge eye-opening moment. I went into that fight thinking I was gonna knock Brad out, found his chin in the first, and I wasn't able to seal the deal. And he made the adjustments, and I was able to keep up. And that's how we won the decision. So that loss really sparked that, we got to treat every round like an individual round. We don't want to come into fights with expectations. We only react to the problems that we're given. And man, it was just a huge theme on that loss of just being able to adapt and overcome every moment of every fight.
I mean, to be honest, you can't blame me for thinking that you're going to catch him and put him away, because your last 6 victories in a row have all been knockouts. Is that something that you always trained for, or is it just like you just have that ability? You always knew that even before mixed martial arts, you had the ability to knock somebody out?
I think I was just blessed with that left hand to solve problems. But the problem is when I expect too much, or if I go in assuming I'm going to get the knockout, it doesn't seem to happen. And so the fights that I do get the knockout, I go in with that idea that we're going to have a war for 15 minutes. I was equally as surprised as everyone else when I put Bobby Green away, because he's hard to hit and hard to knock out. So I just got to go into every single fight thinking this is going to be the biggest fight of my life, and we're gonna fight the full fight.
Do you think you're talking about you just getting older, in your 30s? This isn't the old school days in the South Circle anymore. We're grown men now. Do you think, because you had found out about you guys expecting a baby before the fight, correct?
Yes.
Do you feel like that changes anything, maybe in your preparation or your motivation?
It changed the mentality going to fight camp. Not so much fight week, but fight camp. And that was, I've been training to feed myself, right? I've been fighting to feed myself. And now we got a baby on the line, and I'm going to be a dad. So now being too hungry, being too tired, being fatigued, all that stuff no longer matters. I know what the job I need to get done. And you just got to shut your mouth and get the job done. And we really pursued that with my fight with Bobby Green. And we're continuing it this year as far as, man, no excuses. Sometimes you got to feel like shit and get the job done. And, that's what we had to do in the Bobby Green fight.
Is it a boy or girl that you've got?
But we got a girl. So that means I got more on my hands than if I had a boy.
Yeah.
I don't think fighters make boys. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah. All fighters make girls.
Well, except for Michael Bisping. I mean, he can rub that into everyone, but he's just more of a man than us.
I've got a daughter, you know what I mean? I've got 2 boys as well. You do it enough times, you get one.
No, you don't.
Well, no, not with you. You've got 27 girls, haven't you? But now you're a father, though. For me, when I was, when I was younger, I was reckless. When the kids came along, that's kind of what led me on this path to becoming a professional fighter in the first place. But when kids are involved, it's no longer about yourself. And I would assume for yourself, because as I say, I had kids before I was a fighter. But if my children came along when I was already in the UFC, that would motivate me further, make me train harder, make it more professional, my camps more structured and all the rest of it. But there's some people I know, like Brian Stan, I believe, was like, I've got children now. Was it Brian Stan? Some people have walked away because of children. Where do you sit on that, Drew? And that's probably a stupid question, but do you feel what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I think having children isn't always a compliment to your fight game. I think a change is going to happen, as soon as I hold her in my arms. I don't know in what direction that change is. So
she's not actually born yet. Forgive me. So I had no idea.
No, our due date is June. That's why I'm pushing for this another paycheck before the baby comes out.
Harrington, our producer's having a kid, I think maybe in June as well.
I mean, I don't have the bags under my eyes yet, so we can safe to assume that it hasn't arrived.
Yeah, you will. They having a baby turned me into a pussy for a little while.
I mean, I'm assuming that could happen. I mean, I'm already kind of a pussy though.
Well, it made me soft. I was a little bit. I struggled with that for a little bit. Like after the first kid, it's tough to. Especially when you now it's different because I travel for my training camp. So when I'm really in the shit and I'm really grinding, I'm in Denver and I'm kind of being I'm like a samurai by myself. But when I'm home, when I was doing the camps here at home, it was tough to come home, hold this baby, feed this thing, change a diaper, be so loving, and then have to turn it on and go to practice and train to be a killer and then turn it back off. So I had to develop a switch and I had to figure out how to turn it on and off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I need to find it too hard. I mean, if you know me, you know that cage fighting is really the only thing that makes me masculine. Outside of that, I'm a huge pussy. Like, yeah. So I only got to be tough 3 days out of the year, and it's on a Saturday typically. Man, outside of that, yeah, it's just kind of seeing, what changes are going to come. In this fight game, I've always wanted to be a superhero, and I've always kind of like, this is how I want to fight and how to like act and how to talk. I want to be this superhero. But now since I have a daughter, now I got to be the superhero, and I think that's just gonna be a little extra added motivation.
It's funny that you say cage fighting is the only macho thing about you, because on Twitter, I put a little tweet out. You might have saw some of the questions. Someone was like, ask him what kind of hair product he used, because he's got just perfect hair. And I saw you at the Apex. You're a stylish guy. You were dressed very nicely. I like that trench coat you were wearing, and you're very well put out. You're from Omaha, Nebraska, correct? Actually from Omaha, because I always tease Anthony and say I get where he's from wrong. I always say he's from Omaha and he gets a little bit annoyed. But what was it like for you growing up in Omaha, Nebraska? Tell us about Drew Dober before we saw him in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unique. I think people assume that, if you're from Nebraska, you're part of the cornfields. But, man, I grew up in like Section 8 housing, single mother, not the most financially stable household. So I had to be the man of the house really early. So, I mean, that's kind of how I grew up. My mom's my best friend, huge mother's boy. I couldn't run, jump, or catch a ball. So thank God I found out I could take a punch. Found martial arts at like 13 and fell in love and just got neck deep in it. And then, I found this empty bar that Anthony was already at. And we decided to fight in a cage like every weekend.
Yeah.
And man, my love for the sport grew then, and it keeps growing every day.
I think we've talked about this recently, but it is so crazy to me that like the path to guys coming up now is much different. Obviously, you see guys in the Contender Series. There's the Ultimate Fighter route. There's the I remember you and I fighting on cards on the regional scene, like for, I don't know, $7 and a hot dog, just hoping to make it to the UFC. Do you ever give yourself an opportunity to kind of sit back and reflect, or are you too afraid that you're going to lose sight on what's ahead of you?
No. Gratitude is one of the biggest things that keep me motivated. I mean, we had to sit back, my family and I, at the end of 2022. We were 16 years old, 17 years old, just fighting in empty bars, trying to see, just making recess into a career. But now 2022, sitting 3-0 with 3 knockouts, back in the rankings in the UFC. With the potential of fighting, the baddest man on the planet. And man, it's so surreal. I'm so grateful and blessed. And yeah, I definitely had to take a moment, take a deep breath, and enjoy where I'm at.
Oh, listen, yeah, rightly so. I mean, you're having a tremendous career, and it's crazy, as you say. Life wasn't easy for you growing up, but look at where you're at now. You got a tremendous opportunity, potentially fighting one of the big names in the sport next. We'll leave that there. It just shows where life can take you if you're willing to work hard. But I think it's about, you got to figure out what your talent is first. You know what I mean? You can't just work your ass off and work hard and expect things to happen if you don't have any direction. So what age were you when you kind of figured out that, I know you said before you realized you could take a punch and you started doing martial arts at 13 years old, but at what stage did you think, hold on a minute, I've got something here and I'm going to put all my efforts into becoming a professional fighter?
Yeah, I think it wasn't so much like my biggest worry or concern growing up was if I had that it factor, because I had the passion and I had the love for the sport, had the love for training, and I opened up every time I stepped foot in that cage, and I really enjoyed it. And man, it would be so unfortunate if I had so much love, but I lacked the talent, So it was more so I just ignored if I had it or not, and I just kept pursuing, and my record shows it, right? My career hasn't been perfect, but the love has always been there. And it wasn't until like my late 20s that I kind of found what made me great. And, I stopped simulating other fighters and I focused on what made me great. And I just kind of went headfirst into, I just got to be me and be loud about it.
Mike, back when, like in my late teens, well, how old are you now, Drew?
34.
34.
I just looked it up on Wikipedia because I'm like,
yeah, so we
in my 30s, because you look about 21.
Always. I've always looked 10 years younger, which is great now. But when I was 25, I couldn't find a date.
Yeah,
did you get ID'd in bars and pubs all the time?
I still get ID'd. I can't grow any facial hair.
That is so funny. Anyways, Mike, when I had my first fight, my very first amateur fight, I drove from a small town, Nebraska City, where I grew up at, drove all the way to Omaha with a buddy. We were booze cruising. We were going to watch some amateur mixed martial arts. It wasn't sanctioned in the state. It was, to this day, I still love that guy. I still talk to Tim Baser every once in a while. All you had to do was show up and sign up. There was no matchups. They just matched you up as close as they could and wait. And
what year is this?
06, end of 06. So Drew and I would have been 17, and I sat in the crowd. I just sat in the crowd and watched, and they just needed someone because the numbers were off. So I was like, well, I'll give it a shot from the crowd. And Drew was already fighting. Like he was already going. And that same work ethic, I used to want to be Drew Dober so bad when I was coming up.
Really?
Because he was already good then. I didn't know shit about fighting. I just was like, I'm going to try this shit. But Drew was probably at that point already a national champion Muay Thai guy. Probably, I would guess at that point. He was already a fantastic striker. He was already like at this really nice gym, and he was already good. He was like the best guy around. Like everybody wanted to be Drew Dober back then. It was like it wasn't about like when did he find that path. It was fucking crazy how good he was when we were that young.
Well, I've got one question.
It's funny. Hold on.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
No,
but
please.
which is just
Show
funny.
The guns off. Go on, lad. Just get the guns out real quick.
Well, I mean, after Anthony was just flirting with me, I had to like give a little bit. But
I got to be honest. I talk about it all the time. I'm like, I wish you guys could have seen how good he was compared to everyone else back in 06.
Well, I just think it was great because, like fighting in the cage, like I was watching Anthony Smith and all these guys that were like fighting every weekend. Man, I loved training and I loved performing martial arts, but fighting in the cage scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. And I was looking at Anthony, I was like, man, he looks so calm and collected. Like this is his home,
smart enough to know what I was
like
doing.
I was scared shitless to step in the cage when I was that young. So I was like, man, I wanted to be as cool as Anthony, like I'm shitting bricks every single time, but man, we had to get over that.
I've got one question.
Yeah.
You two know each other very well. You go back a long way. Why the fuck am I messaging Drew Dober on Instagram to get him on here? Why don't
I could have just texted
pop
him.
round his house and knock on his door and say, hey, buddy, my old best friend in the world, fancy jumping on the podcast? I've got to lower myself to reaching out and saying, please come on my podcast. It's your buddy, Anthony. What's going on?
All you had to do was you didn't tell me like, hey, I'm looking at getting Drew Dober on the podcast. You just said, oh, hey, we have Drew Dober today. I was like, hell yeah, I love talking to Drew. So if you would, I didn't know that you were reaching out.
Please, for crying out loud.
I mean, I was quite flattered that Michael Bisping like slid in my DMs, so I wouldn't have any other way.
Yeah, I did it for Drew.
Slide into your DMs, I slithered. So if it's not Paddy, whoever it else is that date May 6th? Is that what it's looking like?
I mean, that'd be a fun date, pay-per-view, big event, tons of crowds. I think the amount of risks I take in the octagon, the crowd deserves to be there. The Apex is fun in the moment, but man, I love the crowd. But I'm at a point right now, I just want another man stand in front of me inside of a cage. And so the location and date, it's up to him. Whatever he wants, I'm able to go. I think RDA wanted to fight me at 170. I was trying to get Jalen Turner, but he was focused on the March 4th event. We're still looking at Renato Miocano. I don't know what he's doing. And if Paddy keeps on talking, I'm down to exchange with him as well. So to me, it doesn't matter the who, when, and where. I just want to show up.
We've got Jalen joining us in I don't know, after you anyway. He's joining us. So you've been calling out Jalen as well. That's a fight you'd fancy down the line?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a unique individual with unique problems at the lightweight division. 6'3", and plus he got that number 10 in front of his name. Very intriguing for me. But he had his soul set on that March 4th event, and so now he's fighting Gamrot.
Well, March 4th next weekend. I mean, it is a hell of a fight card, isn't it? John Jones is coming back, and we've been talking about it. The whole world's talking about it. What do you think? Cyril Gane, John Jones? What's your opinion on that?
I mean, I think John Jones can do what Ngannou did to Gane, just slightly better. I'm very curious on how he moves as a heavyweight. But other than that, I got John Jones winning that.
I don't want to bring up a sore subject here, Drew, and I would guess, you're a pretty level-headed guy. I'm sure you're past it, but obviously you were in there with Islam, and you've kind of felt what the top of that division is like. Who do you see in the division? Well, first of all, what was your experience with kind of what he felt like in the octagon and the problems he presented? And then what did you think of his fight with Volkanovski and kind of with the things that he has coming up behind him in that division?
I think Islam's very technically talented. I think what I felt in the cage wasn't so much just sheer strength, but more so the knowledge of like where he needs to be at every moment. Right? I felt like I was stuck in a hallway and all the doors were locked. Like there was nothing I can do or get out, and like he doesn't make any mistakes. And then I think the frustrating part was he chose not to make mistakes. He chooses not to take risks. He wins rounds. He wins decisions. And to me, it's not the most exciting way to fight, but I had Islam winning that fight. However, Volk caught everyone by surprise by how well he did. And so I left that fight with a notepad thinking about all the things that Volk kind of displayed in that fight. And that's what the lightweight division needs to do now against, the champion of Islam.
That is a tremendous saying, what you just said. What was it? It felt like you were in a hallway with all the doors were locked and you had no way out.
Mm-hmm.
If you hear that on commentary in the next couple of weeks,
you're going to hear that next weekend, I promise.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm dropping that. That's a good one. Is that something you fancy doing down the line? Some a little bit of analyst work on TV and stuff? Because you're very well presented, very, very well spoken, clearly a smart guy. Is that something you'd like to try?
Oh, I'd love to. Talking shop, man. Like I said, martial arts and fighting is like my passion. So if I can't get punched in the face, then might as well talk about it.
Yeah.
Love that.
Anthony?
Well, I was going to talk about the Jalen thing, but I don't know. It didn't really go anywhere. Was it just stuck on the date? Or
yeah. It was kind of frustrating because Jalen and I were going back and forth.
He was responding, yeah.
He was very adamant about fighting that March 4th, and he was trying to coax me into taking it.
Another 8 minutes, he's gonna be here.
Yeah, you can go ahead and tell him we were talking about him. And, I wish him luck, in a week and a half, because I would love the winner of that fight.
Would you have taken a Mateus Gamrot fight on a week's notice?
On short notice?
Even if you were in shape, would you take that fight on short notice? That seems like a tough fight with a first hand.
So it was difficult. My hands were all banged up after the Bobby Green fight. I couldn't start sparring until February.
Right.
So it gives me like 3-4 weeks of contact training. And I'm like, hey, Jalen, like March 4th doesn't work for me. Like if you want to do it, I'll do it in April for sure, 100%. But he was really adamant about keeping that date, which I don't blame him.
If you were him, or even if you're in that same position, because I really like Mateus Gamrot. I love his style. He's good. He's really good, but it doesn't seem like he's the type of guy that you accept as an opponent on short notice. Do you think he's crazy for doing that?
Yeah,
I'm going to ask him.
I think it's very impressive. Gamrot has a way of winning fights without even throwing a punch, and that's a problem in 3 weeks. I'm very intrigued, but I I hope the best for Jalen because I got my money on Gamrot.
Yeah, Gamrot's all about those head outside single legs, time after time after time. That's what he does every single time. And Jalen's got very, very long legs. So that's a lot of stuff to grab hold of. However, head on the outside, as you both know, there's a risk of the guillotine there. And with those long arms that he has and being skinny, because you can't be 6'3" at lightweight without being skinny, that is not an insult. That accentuates those chokes. You know what I mean? So I'm sure he's thought about that. Anyway, enough about that. Let me ask you, in your division, the lightweight division, Beneil Dariush, he's been matched up against Charles Oliveira. How do you see that one going down? And do you think the winner of that will be the next one to fight for the belt?
Yes. I think the winner of that fight should fight for the belt. I don't like the stalling for the super fights and the money fights. I think we should find the best 55er in the world, and I think it's Beneil Dariush. I think Beneil's going to take that fight. I think he's gonna surprise everyone the way he's going to perform. And man, the fight I want to see is Islam versus Beneil, because I think Beneil is going to give Islam the biggest problems.
You know, you see those guys kind of at the top of your division. It's kind of the same group of guys. It's Oliveira, Beneil's always right there, Islam, Poirier, Gaethje, you know, and it's kind of just rinse, wash, and repeat, right? They just all kind of keep moving around. What's it going to take for a guy like you or Gamrot or Sarukian or Jalen? Like, it does seem like they're kind of holding those guys in the top 5 kind of pulled the ladder up, and they're really not letting anybody else in.
Yeah.
What's it going to take?
I think the top 10 in the lightweight division in the murderer's row. I think they're all a bunch of killers, and you got to be a killer to hang with the mix. And man, winning fights by points is not going to impress the lightweight division. So for me to get in the mix of the Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Conor fight, I need to keep on slinging left hands and putting people to sleep, because that's what people want to see, and that's how I'm going to earn my shot. And like, I would love to be a part of that mix. Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Conor. Like, I would want to fight all 3 of them one weekend. Let's do it.
There's one name that you never mentioned there, and it's not by design, just someone that you just forgot to mention. And this would be an incredible matchup. I would love to see you step in there with Justin Gaethje. You ever thought about that one?
But that happens every Tuesday and Thursday at Team Elevation.
Oh, you spar with each other?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Oh, shit, my bad.
No, it's all because people will love talking about it too, because we have the same temperament, personality, and like the way we fight. But we do it every Tuesday and Friday. And man, during the pandemic, we thought about just doing some Instagram live sparring sessions to make some money. It's a lot of fun, but man, one of us has to hold the gold for us to fight each other.
Oh no, for sure. If you're training partners, 100%, totally get that. Let me ask you,
who gets the better of those rounds? Who gets the better of those?
I wasn't going to say that. That's been ridiculous.
You can't ask that
because I know he's not going to answer it.
Right? It's sparring, right? But Gaethje hits fucking hard.
He does.
You know,
what's it like being kicked by that guy?
Kicked?
Yeah.
So surprising enough, he doesn't kick as much as he does in fights. But he does hit me with these hooks that come out of nowhere, and so I understand how Barboza feels. Like, man,
does he shoot takedowns? Does he use his wrestling in the gym? Because in the fights he never does, and it frustrates everybody.
Dude, the funniest thing about Gaethje is, man, he's just the embodiment of a gamer. Like, if you watch him spar, you're going to be disappointed. Like, he loses majority of the rounds. Like, he doesn't look like a killer in the gym. And man, he's always working on something. Him and Trevor have like this mix where like they're constantly working on small things. So you don't know what Gaethje's coming in with sparring with, and then he fights, and it's just like a completely different person.
See, that's really interesting, because it's really hard to do that, because when you're sparring, your ego makes you want to win the sparring rounds. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, like you're talking about there, Trevor and Justin, sometimes it's like, okay, in this sparring matchup, I want you to focus on this. I want you to only get single leg takedowns. I want you to use your left hand only, or whatever it is. But it's hard to stick to that, because even though it's only a goddamn sparring session and there's nothing on the line and there's no money, the ego takes over and you throw that out the window. So that's really, really impressive. We'll let you go on.
Oh, I was just saying, I was going to agree with you, man. I think as a fighter, you got to admit to yourself that you're just going to get your ass kicked Monday through Friday to occasionally kick someone else on a Saturday. When you're in training, like, we're here to fail.
Well, we're going to let you go, because Jalen's jumping on in just a second, and he'll probably think that this was some kind of ambush. But Drew, lovely talking to you. We would love to have you on again, seeing as you and Anthony are bros. I had no idea. I'll let you guys just talk amongst yourselves and just pretend I'm not here.
All right, Drew. Well, it was good. It's good talk. Yeah, Mike's right, man. You're gonna have to come back on and come hang out. We'll have to like break down of one of those fights in the lightweight division or something. Like,
anytime you guys want. I mean, this is what I love to do, and so you guys give me the opportunity. Anytime.
When your fight gets announced, regardless of who it is, we'd love to have you back on. And yeah, you're always welcome on here, Drew. Lovely to talk to you. Really nice to get to know you a little bit better. All the best with everything. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy yourself.